I'm Paul Baumann, and I'm honored to serve as the president of the Rotary Club of Tulsa this year. You're attending a meeting of the best Rotary Club in the world, club number 2500 in District 6110. I hope that 2021 has started off well for each of you. The start of the new year always gives us a fresh perspective that not only allows us to take account of what we accomplished last year, but also cast our vision for what we want to accomplish for this coming year and what we want to strive towards in this year. Every January 1 feels like the proverbial turning of a page from one chapter in life to another. Even though January 1 marks our halfway point for the Rotary Club year, it's good to remember what we accomplished last year and also look forward to what we're going to accomplish in the next 6 months during into this Rotary year. Please allow me to share a quick note of great news from our Salvation Army bell ringing efforts. As a club, the final total for the Rotary Club of Tulsa, we helped raise, the total was $7,434.67. And for our 2020 day of ringing, that's the total we raised. That surpassed our 2019 day of ringing amount of $4,587.78. So great job to everyone who helped organize and also took part in that effort. So thank you and great work to all who took part. I'd like to introduce our Rotarian of the day now, our past president, Chuck Wilson. Chuck?
Hello, Mr. President. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Well, this is a real privilege for me. You've already read Dr. Clancy's bio. He is currently with the University of Iowa Carver College of Medicine as Senior Associate Dean for External Affairs. But as Paul Harvey used to say, I'd like to now tell you the rest of the story. I met Dr. Clancy shortly after he and his lovely family moved to Tulsa. He shared with me a passion that he had, and that was to provide health care to those who could not afford it and those who were not covered by health insurance. Soon after that, he had the idea of starting something called the Bedlam Clinics, which still are in operation today, for just that purpose of helping others in need. We became further acquainted because on the 75th anniversary of Rotary, our club donated $50,000 to that Bedlam Clinic effort, specifically designated for immunization, which is a passion, as you know, of Rotary. So from that moment forward, Dr. Clancy, Sorry about that. Since that time, Jerry and I have become fast friends. I am so happy for him to have the opportunity he has, but it really broke my heart when he and his wife left Tulsa. So welcome back to Tulsa, so to speak, Dr. Clancy.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is really nice to be here. And do I share my screen from my computer? Is that right? Okay, good. All right, I'll share my screen. It says I'm disabled.
Did you receive a co-host invite, Dr.
Now I'm able to share now, so we're good.
Perfect.
We're good. There we go. So it is really nice to be back, to be able to talk with you, and hopefully my comments today will be really on the positive side. And what I want to talk about is some of the innovations we're seeing that are going to last after the pandemic. Some of the positives that have come out of so many negatives here, and I think in many ways these things will last a long time. One of the things that's been a joy over the past several months is that I've been able to stay connected to Tulsa. I'm part of a national task force from the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine. And our study started in July of 2019, and we were assigned to look at the well-being of college students and faculty across the country. And so that study has continued on from my work at the University of Tulsa. Got to teach this past semester health disparities in the OUTU School of Community Medicine. So I taught a full class from Zoom. I'm on a foundation called Intelligent Community Initiative that gives money to Iowa and to Oklahoma. It is really nice being on that side of a foundation of giving money away. So when Ken Levitt complains about how hard his job is, it's not that hard to give away money. It's actually a really nice thing to do. And then we really did an interesting and fun project with the Oklahoma State Medical Association, and I'll go over that in just a minute. This National Academies work, we're going to release our report next week, and it's going to say that the generation of college students, the 18 to 26, 27-year-olds, were already struggling in America. They had had a doubling of their rates of clinical depression over the past decade. We've had a doubling of suicide rates over the past decade, and then the pandemic has hit. And if we are going to be economically viable and strong as a country, we do need to take care of that generation of students as they come through. We've got to get them college degrees. They've got to be able to get through as the knowledge economy expands. And so it's going to be a strong report on that. And it was a joy to be part of. Another project that I was really pleased to be part of is working with the Oklahoma State Medical Association this past year to develop a program where physicians could get counseling and it wouldn't work against their medical license. It's a pretty daunting issue if you are a physician and you're struggling and you need counseling, and on your medical license you have to X that you're receiving mental health care. We were able to develop a program where the physician would get really proactive preventive care ahead of time. And being on the Intelligent board, I was able to help supply funding available to the Oklahoma State Medical Association, so any doctor in Oklahoma could get 8 sessions for free, and it's really turned out to be quite successful. But Paul and I did move back home this past year, and I'm at the University of Iowa now, and I'm part of a large organization. We have 14,000 healthcare related employees within this university, and this is the place where they do the wave. And this is the children's hospital that looks down on the stadium, and this is a children's hospital view looking down back into the stadium. And at the end of the first quarter, the entire stadium waves at the children up in the children's hospital. It's a great tradition that is here. So that's part of what Paula and I are part of. And what's great for Paula and me as well is that Paula's dad played football at the University of Iowa, and so being in that stadium is a special place for us, going way back. And this is the hospital that I'm working in now. It is a huge complex, huge. On Wednesday mornings, it is the 7th largest city in the state of Iowa. There are that many people in this place. It is an incredible place. And this is the children's hospital that looks down on the stadium. And what I get asked a question now, what's it like working in a hospital during this very unique, very stressful time? And what we're seeing, as you know, is surges and then new surges and then new surges. And so every time we have a big increase in positive COVID cases, about 2 weeks later, we have a big increase in hospitalizations. And about 2 weeks later, unfortunately, we have a big increase in COVID deaths. And we are now cruising at about 3,000 deaths per day across this country. And unfortunately, I think that's going to continue for January, February, and maybe March until the vaccine can really take hold. And I'll talk more about the vaccine in just a little bit. What a lot of people don't know, though, is that also happening in the hospital is a huge increase in non-COVID critical care. There's a lot of people that are scared to come to the hospital. And in doing so, they wait and they wait and they wait, and their stroke progresses or their heart attack progresses or their infection progresses. And so we're seeing the highest of ever rates of patient complexity. We're also seeing a big increase in suicidal patients, a big increase in individuals who have turned to alcohol for a way to relieve their stress and now are going through alcohol withdrawal. And then a huge increase in people who have psychiatric conditions who couldn't get into care and now are struggling with being off their medications and psychotic. So it is a very intense place to be working in a major medical center right now. The impact of COVID on our society started early. Within about April, we saw an 800% increase in calls to the National Suicide Hotline, and that has persisted. We've also seen an increase in alcohol consumption across the country, and then from what I see, alcohol withdrawal. And unfortunately, after making some great progress over the past 4 or 5 years on opioid overdose deaths, we have returned to an increase in opioid overdose deaths and an increase in methamphetamine deaths across the country as well. So people are turning to alcohol and to substances to try to relieve the stress of this difficult time, unfortunately, with really negative outcomes. And our society itself is really feeling it as well. So I call this the epidemic within the pandemic, and we are experiencing an epidemic of mental illness and addiction. Back in April of 2018, the number of Americans who endorsed serious psychological distress was about 4%. But in April of 2020, that had increased threefold and it was now at 14%. And the issue with serious psychological distress is that that is a preview toward a major mental illness, unfortunately. When a survey was done in June of this year compared to June of last year, we saw a threefold increase in individuals in America with anxiety disorders, a fourfold increase in individuals with depressive disorders, and a more than doubling of suicidal thought. Within these groups of individuals really struggling, those that had the highest levels of distress were young adults, our Latinx community members, and our Black community members, and our essential workers. So from time to time, we've heard this comment that COVID-19 does not discriminate. Well, it does. It does. And there are parts of our society that are really being hit far harder than other parts of our society. And this study really bore that out, that it's the young adults, Latinx, Blacks, and our essential workers. And it's not just our adults as well. The solid blue line here is 2019, and the dotted line is 2020. And these are emergency room visits for mental health crises among children. And so we see a huge increase in children that are struggling. And I see the same thing in our hospital, a huge increase in 12-year-olds, 10-year-olds that are suicidal. Something that earlier on in my training, I would have just not seen very often at all. We're seeing it pretty commonly now, unfortunately. And so our children are struggling as well. And our physicians are struggling. We have physicians now that are up to 60% of physicians are reporting burnout. This is up from 40% last year. And some physicians are just saying, that's it, and are calling it quits. And I've come and talked to you before about our need for physicians across the country because of as our baby boomers retire and their healthcare needs increase, our baby boomer physicians are also retiring as well. But unfortunately, 16,000 physician practices closed in 2020, and another 8,000 plan to close this year. So we are going to need different models of healthcare delivery as our physician shortage actually worsens. Some of the greatest frustrations from our physicians and the reasons that they are retiring early is they're frustrated that the public is not heeding the health safety guidelines, and they're very frustrated over the anti-science efforts as well. And I've seen that. I've seen that among my class of medical students are retiring early. I just got a call from one of a physician who was in Paul and my wedding. And he retired at the age of 60. He planned to work for another 10 years, but he said enough's enough and decided to retire early. So the work that I get to do is very fulfilling. It's hard and it's unique. And so I'm going to describe it to you. I'm now the consult psychiatrist for the entire 800-bed hospital. I go all over the hospital except to the inpatient psychiatry unit and to the psychiatry clinic. So I go to the emergency room, I go to the intensive care units, I go to the COVID isolation units, and it's a really busy time. We are running everywhere. When we show up on the ward, this is my team that I work with. When we show up in the ward, because you can't really tell who anybody is with all the masks and the PPE on, they say, the nurses ask, "Who are you?" And I say, "Oh, we're psychiatry." And they say, "Thank God you're here." We are seeing really complicated patients with deliriums. We are seeing patients with COVID, and the acute affection is going away, but the COVID is just wreaking havoc on their brain. We're in the emergency room now about 50% of the time. We're also part of the team that has to respond to what are called code greens. And these are very agitated patients that are putting our employees in danger. And that has gone on. One day we had 12 code green calls in a 24-hour period. We were just running from one part of the hospital to another part of the hospital. We have a crisis stabilization unit that is meant to be short-term, less than 24 hours. It is full all the time. And our psychiatric beds, we have 100 psychiatric beds. They're full all the time as well. So it's very intense work, but it is rewarding. And these students and residents are just champions. They did not wither. They did not take a step back whatsoever. They ran to the fire. They are amazing, amazing people to work with. So you should be proud of who's in the healthcare workforce fighting this fight. They are great, great people. I'm going to go over some of the things that we've seen. And some of the things that have changed, I'm going to move on to now kind of how are things changed and how will they change for the long haul. So this is my traditional office, chair and desk and bookshelves. And there's a picture of Paula and my daughter, Mary, taking a selfie at her graduation at TU. And then there's the selfie itself. And there's Mary and me and Paula all on the stage at the Reynolds Arena. And there's Sam playing for Cassia Hall. And I know Allison Anthony is on here. Here's at our United Way unveiling of our annual campaign in 2014. And here's our School of Community Medicine students and the first inaugural class. So very much a traditional office. This is what my office looks like now. It is entirely different how I do the work. I have two screens going all the time. I have a desktop or a screen that links me to all the electronic medical records across the state of Iowa, where I serve as a consultant to the small rural hospitals. I have a high fidelity microphone so that they can really hear me, as well as some of the podcasts that we're doing. I have a high definition camera. I do Zoom and Skype and Teams and GoToMeeting. I have special software now for podcasting, as far as educating our physicians as fast as we can with all the new knowledge that is coming out. It is amazing the amount of research, new knowledge that we are gaining from this pandemic and how we are getting that information out to the doctors. I use my iPad to link directly with my patients in the hospital sometimes, but also across the state of Iowa. I have my N95 mask. I have my goggles. Here's my face shield that I wear all day long. And then we're drinking lots of coffee to keep up the pace as well. But it is an entirely new way to work, entirely different. Some of the things that have happened within medicine that I think are here to stay are just the ability for us to take on a challenge and see how quickly we can learn from it and benefit society. So as you probably remember, early on with the COVID pandemic, we didn't know how to treat it when you got it. We have made huge advances in being able to treat it now. Remdesivir is a drug that controls the virus replication rate. It was developed for Ebola. It didn't work on Ebola, but we found out very early it works on COVID-19. And so many patients now get remdesivir. Dexamethasone is an old drug. It's a steroid drug. One of the things that COVID does is it turns on your immune system to a greater degree than you need to fight it. And so you have all this inflammation and your lungs fill up with fluid from that inflammation. What dexamethasone does is slows and calms your immune system to fight the fight in the right way. And then we've learned different ways to ventilate patients. When normally you expect somebody in bed on a ventilator on their back. when you go to the ICU now, all the COVID patients are on their bellies. It is a better way to ventilate them. They can get more air in and out when they're lying on their stomachs rather than when they're lying on their backs. And so we learned all this very, very quickly. And so it's very promising going forward about the pace that we can learn when new challenges hit us. Another thing that changed a lot is how we do our inpatient work. We put patients who were COVID positive on special units, and then in those units, we have special air handling units within that. So what used to be windows are now big filters that catch the virus and keep the air moving through. And so when I'm up on the COVID-19 isolation units, I am actually relatively calm. I'm wearing all my PPE, but I'm knowing that the air is clean. It's being moved through. In some instances, even within the hospital, we're visiting them using telemedicine. We've expanded our intensive care units, and then we've been able to reassign staff, and the staff have done a great job of just wherever they've been needed, they've gone. One of the things we're most proud of is the development of a telemedicine clinic that can take care of COVID patients via telemedicine in their home while they're doing quarantine. So they stay at home, keeping everybody else safe in the hospital and the clinics. But we're able to provide care to them. And we're now at 100,000 telemedicine visits across the state of Iowa, managing patients in quarantine with COVID-19. And the outcomes of these patients is extraordinary as far as their survival rates. Done the same thing in psychiatry. We've done about 6,000 telepsychiatry visits across the state of Iowa, and we're real proud of that. I think both of these versions of healthcare are here to stay, This is just this is the state of Iowa, and this is a zip code analysis of where our inpatients come from. And if you know Jerry Clancy, he likes maps. But these are our telemedicine visits across the state of Iowa by zip code. And so you see that we've been able to extend really 4 or 5 hours drive away from the University Hospital, which is right in here, all the way out here to almost South Dakota as far as our reach. So we're really proud of that as well. I think this is here to stay for the long run as well. How we educate has changed dramatically. I was asked to host a podcast that provides physician continuing medical education credit, because traditionally how we would get our CME, our continuing medical education credit, was by conferences, but we can't have those conferences anymore. And so can we develop podcasts that the physician can listen to anytime that gives them the CME credits so they can maintain their license? And at the same time, can we get out as much important new information on how to treat COVID as possible? And so this is just a screenshot of, I've got my fancy headphones on and my fancy microphone. And these are 3 physicians that we're interviewing for as far as the podcast. And is traditional. We've had an intruder. One of our faculty physicians' son had a very urgent question and had to ask mom during the taping of this. You can listen to these, and we've tried to gear them toward, yes, physicians are learning from this, but also at the level that the general public can understand them as well. And so Paula listens to these regularly and learns a lot. And we're on Spotify now. It's called Rounding in Iowa. And we've got a total of about 23 already recorded, but we're pushing them out about 2 or 3 a week. And so I think we got 4 or 5 right now that are out there. You can learn all about the mRNA vaccines. That's one session. There's a session on advanced ICU care. We're just about ready to tape one on the long haulers. We've done a whole section on health disparities and the impact of COVID-19 on different parts of our society. We've done an end of life session. Unfortunately, this has been a year where individuals not expecting to have had to work through end of life issues within their family. And so we've got a whole set of sessions on surrogate decisions and decisional capacity and hospice and prognostication. And then one area that I continue to be very interested in is the well-being during and after the pandemic, particularly of our clinicians, because I think they're vulnerable. They are showing some signs of post-traumatic stress. Moving a little bit into my Nerdville area where I absolutely love biochemistry. The University of Iowa was a big participant in the Pfizer vaccine trial, and we started in July. And this COVID-19 virus, one of its key strategies against human tissue is this spike protein. And it's this spike protein that links up with the angiotensin converting enzyme receptor. And when it links up like that, that's the gateway for that virus to get into your cells, particularly your lung cells, and start wreaking havoc and making your immune system go crazy and your lungs fill with fluid and such. And so this spike protein, if the virus can't do what it wants to do with this spike protein, we have neutralized it some. And that's where the Pfizer vaccine is all about. What they were able to do, remember, we got the genetic code for the COVID-19 virus in January, late January. And it was by May that we were starting with phase 1 and phase 2 trials of the vaccines. That's an incredible amount of time. So this vaccine is made of genetic material. Genetic code is going into your arm. It's mRNA, and it's specifically for the spike protein. You're human, and the way that the vaccine goes in, it's in a special carrier, a special polysaccharide gel that has to be kept very cold, goes into your arm, and then your cells absorb that genetic code and tell your own cells to make the spike protein, and then that spike protein goes on your cell surface. We've never done that before. That we're presenting the a piece of that virus on our own cells, but our own cells say that spike is something that we shouldn't have around, and they develop antibodies against it, and it works incredibly well. The first shot you get gives you 1.5 times the amount of antibodies that if you would have had COVID itself. And the second shot gives you 3 times the level of antibodies that if you would have had COVID-19 yourself. This is a game changer. It is a game changer for us to be able to respond to future new viruses. This technology using mRNA, we were working on it really since the early 2000s, but for the first time, we figured out how to make the mRNA work right with our body. And in doing so, we can be that specific and accurate and change the mRNA as the virus changes. So we're all worried about this new, more contagious version. It's possible that we can change the genetic code to make our vaccine more accurate to this new variant as well. So far, this new variant does not seem to be any less responsive to the vaccine. But if it does, we're going to have the technology that we can go that fast. It's amazing, amazing, amazing. At University of Iowa, the first injection for the mRNA vaccine was July 30th, 2020. And we did a total of 270 individuals. And I was the first in the state of Iowa to get the vaccine. And I knew I got the vaccine, even though it was supposed to be placebo, normal saline, and vaccine. When the pharmacist came in and he's looking at the vial and he says, there's still more of it to dissolve, I knew, all right, normal saline doesn't dissolve. So, and then I got the shot, and it went in, and it was cold. It was really cold, and nothing for about 7 or 8 hours. And then at about 10 o'clock at night, it started to get warm, and then it started to hurt, and then it started to hurt a lot. And Paula says, what? And I said, my arm hurts. And I had a big smile on my face because I knew the antibody was working. And Paula said, just like John Mellencamp's song, hurts so good, doesn't it? And it did. It hurt. So the next day, I was a little bit sore in my muscles, a little bit achy in my joints, and then it just flipped off like a light switch, and I was fine. I was fine. So to all of you, this vaccine is a game changer. It's going to be great. Pandemics change society, but as we think about the future, some things I want to leave you with. First of all, this vaccine works. It really does. Second of all, we're going to be needing to work on the long-term health and mental effects of COVID. There are a group of individuals that when they get COVID, they do not come back full strength. And I've seen a number of those patients. This virus has had an impact on their brains. It's had an impact on their body. had an impact on their blood vessels. We are going to need to address the health disparities that this virus has accelerated. We had terrible health disparities in America before. You pour COVID on top of that, it made it worse. We're also going to need to rethink jobs as we come out of this as far as economic development. Back to my Chamber of Commerce days with Mike Neal, we need to be thinking, what are the new jobs? How do we pull out of this? Where are there opportunities? And some closing thoughts. And this is me getting the shot right there on July 30th. I'm now being studied on. I'm really on how long will the vaccine last. And so they take blood on a pretty regular basis to see where my antibodies levels are. I'm still out in the middle of the high risk areas, and we're seeing how long and how much does this vaccine actually protect in the long run. Some closing thoughts. I think these mRNA vaccines are game changers, and they'll be here to stay. I think telemedicine is here to stay at this higher level as well, and it'll be part of the solution for the shortages of clinicians that we have, and it's going to be applied in rural and urban settings. I think we've got new models of education that will not go away. I think Zoom and podcasts are an ability for us to connect far, and these podcasts are a way that we can get a lot of information out there really quickly. I think there's going to be less travel and more Zoom. I think we're going to work from home more. People are going to make their home more comfortable to work at, and there may be less rented office space in the traditional way. Very, very proud of science. I was biochemist before I went to medical school, and science here has really, really saved lives. It's been a great thing. And unfortunately, disinformation has caused some suffering. But in the big picture, science is going to win here. It is. And I think we're really going to start seeing the benefits of the vaccine come March and April. And by the time we get into the summer, some sense of normal will start to be coming back. And I'm very hopeful for it. So those are just some of my comments. And Chuck, are we still doing question and answer like we've done in the past?
Yes, sir, we are. And are you able to see those on the chat?
I am just now.
Okay.
Okay. I would be interested to know more about the staff in distress calls, maybe providing an example, and then what follow-up happens. Okay. So what we're seeing is there's a lot of, particularly for healthcare, there's a lot of competing needs. People are feeling very dedicated to their patients into the hospital, but also very dedicated to their families. And that transition back and forth from work to home is a very stressful time. And people are so worried about infecting their families and so much. And so we've had a number of employees who've decided to stay in hotels for a long time. And the university has put them in hotels for a long time when they're in high risk positions. So those have been some of the kind of the number one tension related issue is, am I going to infect my family? Am I going to infect other patients as well? And that's where the team comes in. We've got a 24-hour hotline, and then we have a clinic and just works patients through that nicely. And when people have called, they have been really, really in desperate sorts, and the team has been able to walk them through and kind of put them back together. Just like when someone experiences a death in the family, they are initially swarmed and then often left alone too soon. I feel we treated the healthcare professions in a similar way. What would be meaningful ways we can show our love, appreciation, and support to the medical community? And great to see you, Dr. Clancy. Well, great to see you as well, Allison. I think right now we're still in the middle of search. We're still pushing. When we get the chance, there is going to be a huge wave of vacations coming. When we can go on vacation, we're going to go. And that's where I hope we take care of our healthcare workers nicely, that we give them the opportunity to take vacations and to rest up a little bit. Paul and I are already trying to time out. All right. Airline flights are pretty good prices right now. Hotel flights are pretty good prices. When's Paula going to get the vaccine that we can time it, that we can go on vacation and such? So So I think right now it is just as supportive as you can, but in the long run, it's going to be about rest and rehabilitation and just kind of building back a little bit. Does Dr. Clancy have any thoughts regarding the new data suggesting that we should delay the second vaccine dosage to be able to vaccinate more people, with the new data suggesting one dose provides 80 to 90% protection? Yes, so I was asked this yesterday as well by brothers and sisters. I'm a little worried about that because right now we've got this protocol that went pretty fast on the 2 shots, and showing that you get 1.5 times after the first shot as far as antibodies, and then 3 times the amount of antibodies. We don't know how long it lasts after that. So I'm in that group right now that is now, it was August that I got my last shot. And so it's tricky right now as far as what's the exact right thing to do. I actually am not, I'm not a supporter of delaying the second shot right now. I'm not, just because we don't know. What are the actual treatments for distressed MDs? Some of it is just traditional cognitive behavioral therapy. We have physicians that are sometimes just so perfectionistic about taking care of their patients and doing everything the right way, that during this onslaught of illness and difficult decisions, you can't make perfect decisions every time. It's just critical care decision after critical care decision after critical care decision, and physicians are struggling with that. Not every decision has gone with it, and so there's a calming of the physician of, you're doing your best, you're in the fight, you're doing what you can do during extraordinary times. Can you share your slides? Absolutely, happy to do that. Am I missing anything else, Chuck?
I think that's does anyone have a question they want to ask orally here?
I have a quick question for Dr. Clancy. I'm John Croissant with Tulsa Public Schools School Board and with the Rotary. I know you showed that there's a lot of both adults and children that are suffering from psychiatric issues. I know we're in distance learning in Tulsa Public Schools. We have a lot of schools that are in person. Have you seen any issues in Iowa or across the country between distance learning and in-person learning, and the different issues with COVID protocols at school and everything?
Yeah, John, I mean, just a hugely difficult situation. We know that the distance learning is not as good. We do know that. We also know the teachers are at greater risk, and it is just a terrible balancing act. We're having the same struggles right now. The school districts are petitioning the state and the governor's office to be able to stay online, and the governor's office and the State Department of Education are pushing hard on, you need to be in person because the children are losing so much ground. So I actually would remind everybody, we're just a few more months out as far as having vaccine available, and I think a decrease in the intensity of this virus. What the vaccine looks like, it probably does for most people when they have the vaccine, if they're exposed to the COVID virus, they don't get sick at all. Okay, but there are some patients that do get sick, but they don't get very sick at all, but they're still probably infectious. And so we're going to have to keep that in mind as well. And until we get the level of viral load down a little bit. Yeah. John, that was just a hard question. Yeah.
Dr. Clancy?
School board positions are some of the most important and most difficult decisions I can think of. Being a university president, pretty hard right now too, but school board stuff.
Dr. Clancy, Norm
Yes,
Simon.
Norm, how are you?
It's so good to see you. Question, I had the first vaccine shot. It had no ill effect whatsoever. But there was a report today, I heard today about one of our cardiologists here locally found the second shot to be not the most pleasant experience in terms of side effects. What was your experience with the second injection? Was it a lot more severe?
It was, so the first one, the next day I was hobbling around the hospital, and actually I was working with the med students and residents. And they were laughing at me as we were doing our 7 miles up and down the staircase and across the hospital. They'd get a block ahead of me. They were having fun with me. The second one was even worse. I mean, my arm hurt immediately. I needed ice on it right away. I was slow. So I think what people need to understand is that the day of and after the shot, you may not feel well for a while. But what was both times, the first and the second time, it got worse and worse and worse, and then it just stopped, and I was better. I mean, I told Paula, I said, I'm better. All the side effects are gone. Me being the first in Iowa and being the first person I knew to take the shot, that was a real unknown to me. And so that's one of the things they asked me to do as far as educating others, is let people know that it builds and then it stops. Builds and it stops. But the head of our vaccine trial, I've asked her about, anything severe at all. And she has said, no, Jerry, you probably had as rough a time as anybody that we've seen. I think it's important for people to realize that in America, we tested the Pfizer vaccine was 44,000 patients. 22,000 of them got the active vaccine. Moderna, pretty much the same numbers. Normally, when we do vaccines and have them approved, it's about 3,000 patients. So we have a huge number of people being studied in this. And so far, the safety protocols, for the most part, have been very favorable compared to other vaccines. If anybody's had the recent shingles vaccine, the Shingrix, people say it's very similar. I'm delayed on the Shingrix because I'm in the COVID vaccine trial, but it is like that. But Norma, I was actually kind of pleased to have the reaction, knowing that my immune system was doing what it was supposed to do.
Mr. President, can we take a couple more questions? How are we doing on time?
Let's take the last couple of questions there, Chuck, and then we'll move
okay.
On.
Dr. Clancy, there's a couple more on chat now.
If you did not know you had COVID and you get the vaccine, does it affect you differently? So far, what we're seeing is actually, if you had COVID and then you take the vaccine, you actually are protected even better. So it's actually a positive. And so we're not seeing individuals having a negative reaction at all. In fact, they probably have a more robust, even stronger immune response ready to come in the future as well. So that's why they're actually, at first they were going to say, if you've had COVID, you go to the end of the line. They're not saying that anymore. As far as the vaccine. Is it possible to offer your views on use of monoclonal antibodies in an effort to avoid oxygen therapy? Yeah, so the monoclonal antibodies, these are antibodies geared specifically to buy some time for your immune system to give the right response. And so you give antibodies that neutralize the virus, and then your immune system comes on board. The remdesivir comes on board, and to slow the replication, and then the dexamethasone is on there to make sure your immune system doesn't go haywire. It's a really nice in-between therapy to keep somebody away from having to go to the hospital. And we're using the monoclonal antibodies on people that are at higher risk. So if you have hypertension or diabetes or a little bit older, and looks like if you got COVID, you might have a little bit more trouble. Monoclonal antibody is a great in-between step. So if I got COVID now, they would probably, I'm 59 years old, they would probably offer me monoclonal antibodies, and I would take it because it helps your immune system buy some time. Great question. You guys know your stuff.
Dr. Clancy?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to share your thoughts and your experiences with us. And I think I speak for everyone when I say we miss you so much, but we're so happy for what you're doing back home.
Well, thank you, Chuck. Thank you very much. And Paula's been on with us as well. So she snuck in on the Zoom as well. And Paul and I actually have a long-term plan that we'll be spending hopefully several months a year in Tulsa while we split time here. So we'll be back.
Great to know. Thank you.
I'm a permanent member of the Chamber Board of Commerce, so Mike Neal's not done with me yet. So
that's good. Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Dr. Clancy, for being here today. Thank you, Chuck. I'll turn it over now to our inspirational moment, our past president, Linda Bradshaw. Linda?
Thank you very much. Happy to have Dr. Clancy with us today. It was back in 2004 that President John O'Connor asked me to chair the Henry P. Ibis Citizen Athlete Awards. And so accepting the position, it was very important to me that it be an evening that would be significant for our Rotary Club, for the foundation, raise lots of money in our membership, and also to recognize those outstanding athletes. So as I began to work the timeline and choreography of the event, I knew it had to be a wonderful beginning and a wonderful ending as well. As our committee began our assignment with the help of many Rotarians, we were able to secure Coach John Wooden, who would receive a Special President's Award, Jackie Joyner Kersey, female athlete, Ozzie Smith, St. Louis Cardinals, male athlete. And then I invited Nadia Comaneci and Bart Connor to be Master of Ceremonies. Coach Bob Stoops, Coach Eddie Sutton would also highlight the evening. Well, since the IBA was on June 14th, which is Flag Day, I knew I wanted a multi-purpose evening. I wanted to honor those athletes, and I also wanted to showcase our club's dedication to patriotism. So I asked a crescendo winner to sing the national anthem, and then I wanted to finish with the Stars and Stripes, which is our national march. That would be so easy because the man who could replicate the composer of so many marches was in our club. Jimmy Sade was a dead ringer for John Philip Sousa, and he had conducted over 77 concerts nationwide. He portrayed John Philip Sousa. So deciding to ask him to connect the Stars and Stripes at the end of the evening, it would be necessary, I thought, to run it past his front man son, Bob Sade. So Bob said, Dad would love to do it, but he's been very ill this year. And I just said, it's okay, I'll risk it. Jimmy, of course, accepted, and the evening was set. On the morning of the event, I headed to the hotel with blisters on both of my feet from inadequate shoes the day before. Finding a place in a hotel restaurant, I sat down to have coffee and go over the agenda and the plans for the day. About 8:15, my phone buzzed, and I saw it was a call from Barry Switzer, one of our celebrities. Linda, he said, I have good news and I have bad news. Good news is my daughter is having a baby. Bad news is that I can't be there tonight. And I said, it's okay, Barry, thanks. So around 9 o'clock, it buzzed again, and I saw that it was from Jackie Joyner Kersey's agent, and my stomach flipped. Linda, she said, I have bad news, and I also have some good news. The bad news is that Jackie can't make her connecting flight that is scheduled and will have trouble making it there for the evening. However, the good news is that she thought if she and her husband got in their car right now and began driving, they could be there by 6 o'clock. And I said, well, then tell her to get in the car. Well, I welcomed Nadia and Bart. They came in the hotel. We visited a while, and then another call came in. The ID name only said Ozzie. Ozzie. Linda, I have bad news. And I thought, oh boy, here we go again. I'm having trouble with my flight. Everything is delayed out of Dallas. I'm so sorry, but it doesn't look good for tonight. I just replied, Ozzie, I don't care what you do. Find you a way to get here. I hope to see you here this evening at 5 o'clock. Well, my voice was raspy. My feet were hurting because of the blisters, and I was getting a sore throat. By now, it was almost 11 o'clock when my phone buzzed again. When I saw Jimmy Sade was calling, he was my closer for the program, our John Philip Sousa guy, and I literally was in tears. Linda, I'm not well today. I woke up and I just interrupted him and said, it's okay, Jimmy, it's all covered. Stay home, take care of yourself. We love you. Joseph Bias can conduct for you tonight. It's okay. Well, in my mind, it was okay, but sometimes that's just the risk you're taking when you ask a Rotarian who's 89 years old, and it was his birthday after all on Flag Day, and who has been very sick to do something so difficult. So at 1 p.m., the band was in place in the rehearsal in the ballroom with Joseph Bias, who would be conducting the Stars and Stripes for the evening. By now, my voice is hoarse and I can barely get anything out. Sitting outside of the ballroom, leaning back against the wall, I listened to the musicians as they warmed up. I looked down the long hallway, and in the shadows, I could see someone open the door. Very slowly coming down the hall was a man followed by a lady. And as they came closer, I stood up. It was Jimmy, holding his John Philip Sousa jacket on a hanger, coming towards me. I couldn't speak. And as he got right in front of me, he simply said, I can do this. I can do this. Well, as chairman, I was to introduce him with and my voice almost completely gone. I was beginning to feel sick. My feet were hurting. I turned to my daughter at the table and said, I don't think I can do this tonight. I just don't think I can introduce you, Jimmy. I just don't think I can. And then I heard the maestro's voice behind me say, I can do this. Somehow I found my voice to do it, and I would like to share a video with you now. Thank you for listening to my inspirational moment.
He has thrilled thousands for decades with his characterization of John Philip Sousa through the concerts he has conducted around the country. I am very proud to celebrate his 89th birthday with him tonight. He is one of my very dearest and my personal friend. Please welcome Maestro James G. Sane.
I was at that IBA award ceremony, and I remember that as well, President Paul. That was just a fabulous time. So Bree has teed up our Sarge time there. Not quite as inspirational sounding as John Philip Sousa, but President Paul, we're playing Rotary Wood Squares again today. We're going to see if you can get a winning hand. I think we'll start out with well, what is it, Bree? Are we starting with Linda or Daniel? I think it's Linda. So Linda brought us an inspirational moment, but she brings us another one here. There's another good friend of hers, Big Mike Chittum. And Linda's making a contribution because back in 1997, she and Mike went through orientation together as new members of Tulsa Rotary. And she said that she remembered his laugh, his banjo, and his dedication to the kids at Celia Clinton. And I certainly remember that too, Linda. We appreciate you making that contribution in memory of Big Mike Chittum. Thank you so much. Let's see. So there's your first Rotary Wood Square, President Paul. Let's go for Daniel Gomez on this one and see if we can get a winner there. Now, before we throw this up, there's Daniel sent us some information. And it seems as though they were going through some archives at Connor Winters. Connor Winters recently moved to First Place Tower, and they did some anthropological excavations, and they came up with some images that Daniel thought might be meaningful to the Rotary Club of Tulsa. And you may recognize, think hairstyles, ladies and gentlemen, think hairstyles. Can you see, is there a guy there that you kind of recognize as a past president with some kind of hair? I mean, it is cool. I wish I had hair that was this cool. These are photos that were taken of past President Hannibal when he worked at Connor Winters, starting out his legal career. And anybody that stylish certainly will rise to the top of their profession. Past President Hannibal, we appreciate your stylish characteristics and your participation in our Rotary Club. Daniel, thank you for sending us these very important anthropological documents we can hang on to here. Let's see. So I think now, President Paul, you've got 2 Rotary Wood squares. We just got 1 left to go on this. Let's go with the center square, the always handsome Joe Moran. Joe Moran sent us $250 in recognition of 43 years of marriage. Now, I'm not very good at math, but to me, that says that every year that Joe was married to his lovely wife was worth $5.81 of happiness. So 5 times the happiness, almost 6 times the happiness in each year is pretty fantastic, Joe. We're grateful that you chose to recognize your anniversary, and we wish that you will have many more with your beloved. Thank you so much. We actually have a couple more finds here. You've got your 3 in a row, President Paul. You're a Rotary Wood Squares winner once again, but we also have a couple more finds. One of them is from our own President Paul, and many of you may have remembered from our pre-Christmas event, President Paul did a nice dance for us. We were able to find another President Paul dance video, recognition for his birthday that's coming up. And you do look really mature in this video, President Paul. I wanted to mention too, Paul, Dr. Clancy was talking about the vaccine, and I was hoping that you would kind of be the guinea pig for the Rotary Club of Tulsa. If you'd get the vaccine, we could kind of see if you lose all your hair, or if maybe you grow a 3rd eye or a horn or something. That would be sort of a harbinger for the rest of us to know whether it's a good idea to get that or not. We've got one more find today, and I want you to see this picture of a guy who looks really happy. This is Phil Viles and his lovely wife, and they got married. That's a wedding picture there. If you look at that wedding picture, one party looks super excited to be married. The other party looks a little more somber about being married. I'm not sure what that means exactly, Phil, but I noticed that in the picture Phil sent us to celebrate his anniversary, and this is their 46th anniversary, by the way, both parties look equally happy with the situation. It's always good to see a couple smiling on their 46th anniversary. And that anniversary is on January 11th, folks, so we still have time to send gift cards and letters to Phil's wife to make up for that somber photo back when they got married. Folks, thank you so much for everything you did in 2020 for the Rotary Club of Tulsa Foundation. And I'm certainly grateful and looking forward to 2021 because Matt Bristow is still in the lead, and I need to overcome that obstacle in my life. Happy New Year, folks.
Thank you, Sarge Carl, and thank you, Bree, for your assistance. I want to say special thanks to this week's sponsors, Hearts for Hearing, Kaylee Clark, Fine Airport Parking, Sherry Fine, Chris Ambergy, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Daniel Simone, Kevin McManus, Lewis Roofing, Kevin Lewis, Ken Freeman. We have some upcoming programs on January 13th. We have our own Phil Armstrong going to share about the 1921 Race Massacre Centennial Commission. He's the project director, and I've heard great things about his presentation, so you'll want to be here for that program. January 20th, we have Rick Dixon, TU Athletic Director, will be here with us also. So please join us for those upcoming programs. And thank you for joining us for our meeting today. I hope you have a great rest of the week and a great day today. And we are adjourned.